I'm Dr. Stephanie Coulter, and I'm here inside the studio today with my friend and colleague, Dr. Tony Doss. Thanks for joining us.
He's a great pleasure.
Esteemed former fellow, and you're showing us the ropes on how to use medicine and informatics to help us look into the futures. Listening to your presentation today, well, I was humbled, and I was thinking that the whole time, you're giving me an image of the Jetsons, right? And I'm behind. I'm already behind on all of this because it seems so futuristic. And your presentation today almost made it seem like it's approachable.
It's not only approachable, Steph. Thanks for having me, by the way. I think the thing about it is that you're already using it. You don't even know sometimes that you're using AI and informatics inside of your evaluation of these patients. Even the programs that you use for echo, nuclear, vascular, PET, CT, they have algorithms in them that are making the diagnosis and assessment of these patients' anatomy and physiology basically combined. And we're using a lot of these technologies on a daily basis, and I showed several of those today. So some of those were probably familiar names, some of them are probably not familiar names, but at the end of the day, this is an evolution of a way to be able to assess patients and to be able to diagnose and then ultimately to treat by using, I would say, helpful hints from AI. And that's wouldn't be worried about it, I'd be more embracing what it's actually going to do for you.
We have to embrace it, because either we embrace it or we're behind, right? Sure. Because the patients are demanding it. The payers are demanding it. What was your funny comment, fee for service or fee for value?
Yeah, no, that's the transition that's occurring.
That's how you get people to pony up for the added cost, or in fact, like you were describing, in many ways, there are opportunities for us as physicians, as hospital systems, to actually recoup some of the money that we're already spending on patient care that's going unfunded. And now in the new world reality, maybe some of that funding can be reestablished or reallocated back to the people that are on the front lines that are providing the care, or the systems that are providing the care?
I think the thing is that when you reduce variability and you increase the specificity of diagnosis, then you reduce costs. There's no question about it. If there's 10 of us that do things in 10 different ways, and we're going to the administration saying we need 10 different catheters or 10 different devices, the fact of the matter is that when you can show that there's an improvement in outcomes, that fee for value, and you can show that with that there's less variability, meaning everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction, and with that brings resources, because the payers are very comfortable paying for things that they feel will reduce their costs.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's not a reduction in the dollar amounts to each individual or each individual patient, it's the total cost of care. So if you can reduce the likelihood of needing a second echo because one wasn't done properly, or as you know, you're only going to get one covered and the patient's going to undergo that other thing. So part of this is reduce variability, increase the overall efficacy of what you're diagnosing, and then ultimately the costs will go down and the resources will go up.
And partly, I can see, in a lot of ways, we see the big box burden of medicine as a blanket that we can't, get out from under. And yet, in some ways, it's this verticalization of medicine that's actually going to encourage these kinds of investments and requirements to standardize what we do, justify why we're doing it, like appropriate use criteria, guideline-directed therapy, check boxes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think we want to have, so many different options for doing things that aren't validated by data. We're data-based, we're data-driven people, cardiologists and other specialists. We like the data. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're doing things that are guideline-directed, and we want that gentle nudge sometimes that allows us to basically take information that we may not see right in front of us, maybe it's a piece of information that's not right in the electronic health record, easy to assess, that maybe in the future there'll be a unified health record that basically tells you, hey, by the way, there was this test that was done 8 years ago and this is what it showed, and that impacts what you're doing right now.
It's actually huge because I don't know about you, but we're Epic, so we get care everywhere.
Yeah.
And we just implemented an Epic upgrade in the office, and well, I can unfortunately go down that rabbit hole when I see a patient.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
Spend a lot of time through that, but so I'm not being remunerated for my time, even though I might save a lot of resources and redundancies by like having the time to review, you know, the full record and to see the patient as a full human as opposed to a myopic view of what's the arrhythmia or what's the valve show, because
well, you're going to share in the remuneration at some point, and the reason is because there are shared savings that occur, and the payers have always been open to the idea of sharing those savings. The problem is in a fee-for-service world, doesn't really exist. So when you get to this other part, I think that physicians really can't fathom the idea of doing less can actually potentially make you more, and that's really not the goal. But the goal is to do it right and to do it without so much, you know, overlap and redundancy, et cetera, and that's value, right? So ultimately, those things are going to help us do that.
It's kind of cute. So you're all in for the value. I'm for sure into value. So what I really heard from like the big takeaway is things are coming. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Like, embrace it.
I think if you just recognize that it's going to help you and not hurt you, you will embrace it. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is take care of our patients more efficiently. We want to have the data at our fingertips, and we want to do things that are guideline-driven, data-driven. And if we can do that without changing our workflow, then I think we'll be able to adopt them. That's been the biggest challenge to adopting new things, is that changes the workflow, everybody's out. If it doesn't change the workflow and it's kind of working in the background.
If it's an add-on,
nobody wants to work harder. I mean, we want to work smarter, right?
Well, yeah, we all work. Well, you know, the paradigm is that the physicians are working harder than they ever did before.
Yeah, for sure.
So not putting more burdens on the physician and like having more computer-driven AI, you know, more confidence in knowing what the next step will be.
Yeah.
You know, like how fast can you get this done, right?
Sure.
Because speed matters in a hospital-based climate. So there's lots of things that having data scientists on your faculty can help you with.
Yeah, and we have the ability to work closely with innovation teams and folks that are in the tech space when we do certain projects, which to me starts to give them an insight into what workflow for us actually looks like. And they can bring a lot of value to you. And I think that they don't know until they actually witness what you're actually doing on a daily basis. And something shocked them.
Yeah,
how much time we waste and how much time we spend, but also sometimes how they can take little changes and completely improve our daily workflow just by a couple of little things. And so I think it's worthwhile keeping those things in mind.
I think that's the best lasting lesson from all this, is that, you know, as we have accumulated massive amounts of data on our patients and about their outcomes, we're going to be able to use that data to improve what we do for the patients, for mankind, obviously, and for research-generated ideas. So being part of a bigger organization, there's some real upstream value for that.
For sure.
So doctors shouldn't be afraid, the med students, you know, like...
Well, that's another great question, is how are we going to train the next generation? Is it going to be what we're doing now, and how much is going to be added to their knowledge base for AI-driven data assessment? So what are they going to need to know in that space? And I can tell you there's going to be plenty, and that's going to be a great way for them to learn and get educated without being only at the patient's bedside. They'll be able to take a look at,
because we need to train them like on, you know,
virtual
simulators. So in fact, we all have simulators, but you can't, even unless you have the techie people around to simulate some grave medical,
It's
conundrum.
additive. Yeah, they're additive.
They are definitely. So I think that there's value in that. But I love that you started out with just like the 1914 technology of the ECG. I mean, like, because I kind of poo-poo it, like, because as a single EKG, how's that going to help me?
Right.
It tells me what rhythm you're in, what your heart rate is.
Now you can tell whether they have structural heart disease.
I know.
You can follow it, on a regular basis for ischemia. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that can be found, and it's all
well, not only that
portable stuff.
It's available,
Yeah.
and it doesn't interfere with your workflow. And so having that dumped into some algorithm, one of our fellows was involved in that big aortic valve.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the one. He's the data guy behind it.
That's great.
And he's a fourth-year fellow, actually from Southwestern.
Okay.
He's a total star.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Dr. Doss, for joining us for another round of Inside the Studio.
And thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.